Ya hem ders sonu izledim fırsat buldum denk geldi.
Tamam. Birisi mikrofon açık.
Evet, konuşalım.
Right, hello everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday evening. Sorry about the delay. We had a bit of a technical glitch, but stuff happened. So let's get smashing. If you're new to the YouTube channel, you're welcome to watch the 3 semesters of introductory lectures on the wisdom of Kabbalah. And if you're already in the channel and you're following through, we're going to carry on where we left off. We're on the last excerpt from the World Kabbalah Convention, lesson number 1, excerpt number 8, and then we're going to move on to the second lesson and start that from scratch. So I'll carry on as usual. If you have any questions, shoot them through. We'll try to find answers together from the excerpts as usual. All right, so 8, excerpt number 8 from Baal Islam, 600,000 souls is the name of the article. The sign for the body's complete correction is when one feels that one's soul exists in the whole of Israel, in each and every one of them, for which he does not feel himself as an individual, for one depends on the other. At that time he is complete, flawless, and the soul truly shines on him in its fullest power, as it appeared in Adam Harishon. All right, let's do that again. The sign of the body's complete correction is when one feels that one's soul exists in the whole of Israel. So we have to understand the body is the desire to receive. So we're not talking about our meat and flesh. Okay. So when the desire to receive for itself is corrected, then one feels that one's soul exists in the whole of Israel, which means that all of my desires are straight towards the Creator. Right? In each and every one of them. So all of us together, okay, straight to the Creator, we should be feeling this exalted state, for which he does not feel himself as an individual, for one depends on the other. So the whole society feels like one body rather than individuals. So we all complement each other, we're all completing each other, and that is causing wholeness. At that time, he's complete, flawless, and the soul truly shines on him in its fullest power as it appeared in Adam Harishon. So as soon as we correct our desire to receive for ourselves, and we connect with the rest of humanity, the rest of reality, whatever you want to call it, that should empower us with something called a soul as it was first created. And that first created soul is Adam Harishon. It's named Adam Harishon. All right. So just bear with me. Okay, you guys can shoot questions whenever. I'm moving on to excerpt number 1 from the second lesson. And the second lesson is called Lishma, out of faith in the sages. As you know, Lishma means for her sake. Ray is asking, is this a sensation we can discuss in the 10? And how is it best to do that? Well, it's not really a discussion for us because inner sensations are impossible to convey. All right. So we might both like chocolate, but the way we both like chocolate, it's just like not really possible to convey. So what can we say? What's the best thing we can say? Oh, I love chocolate. And you can say, I love chocolate too. But how you love chocolate and how I love chocolate is obviously going to be different. Okay. So despite the fact that there is something in common, there's really nothing to discuss. Do you see what I mean? Okay. So this is also part of our inner work. We have to understand that the sensations between a person and the creator is like the relationship between a couple, not open to discussion to third parties. Does that make sense? All right. So it's best to keep that part of inner work. All right. So I'm going to carry on reading Lishma, out of faith in the sages, excerpt number 1. This is Rabash article number 4. What is a flood of water in the work? There's a matter of above reason. This is regarded as wanting to walk with his eyes shut, meaning that although reason and the senses do not understand what our sages tell us, yet assume upon them faith in the sages and say that we must take upon ourselves faith in the sages as it's written, and they believe in the Lord and his servant Moses. Without faith, nothing can be achieved in spirituality. All right, so let's read that again. There's a matter of above reason. Now, this above reason is a bit of a tricky question. It's a tricky concept, okay? So, on the one hand, we have to be above reason, meaning above our desire to receive, okay? Normally, that's a spiritual state because that's what Lishma is. When I'm in a state of existence above my desire to receive. However, there's also going above reason when we are in the study, but we are still not in spirituality, not in Lishma. So how's that going to pan out? That's going to pan out as confusion. This is why on the path, we are very much confused. Okay, so what is above reason? How am I going to go above reason? How am I going to do this? What am I going to do with this? How am I going to do with that? And blah, blah, blah. All this dealing with all kinds of inner turmoil or inner contradictions or inner conflicts require us to go above reason according to the level we're in. Okay, however, it's always a confusing situation. Also, in spirituality, going above reason in every state is also a confusing situation. However, as you know, once you've got experience in one thing, then that experience can carry on to your next state, right? But we don't have any experience in terms of above reason. We don't know what Lishma is until we attain spirituality. So, accordingly, a person can't really put their finger on it while we're still working in, in our five corporeal senses with the dot in the heart. All right, does that make sense? So if we are in that state, what am I supposed to do? That's what Rabbi is talking about. Well, you just close your eyes and do as I say. Okay? And that's Rabash's solution to the situation, which is pretty much natural because that's how kids grow up when they grow up with us, don't they? So kids are getting ready for life, and at home you tell them to do something, and as kids they just do it. They understand they're under your control, they understand they're under your guidance, they understand they can trust you, they have that feeling, so they do so. In the study of the wisdom of Kabbalah, because we're all grown up and know everything already. So it's very hard for us to close our eyes and go straight forward, okay? Because we're already so smart, okay? And so it's a bit of a drama. So following the guide, telling what the guide says, and and then I've got all kinds of funny ideas about how I think the world should be managed. Okay? And so on and so on. So what can you do? We have to overcome these things. So, meaning that although reason and the senses do not understand what our sages tell us, they assume upon them faith in the sages and say we must take upon ourselves faith in the sages, as it's written, and they believed in the Lord and his servant Moses. Without faith, nothing can be achieved in spirituality. So we just have to go with what the sages say. All right. What's the biggest check factor here? Okay, what is it? How can I check if I want to do that or not? Because it's a question mark, isn't it? I could be following any Tom, Dick, and Harry with my eyes closed. And then look how that turned out in Germany in World War II. A big mess, right? So how are you going to close your eyes and follow someone? Well, first of all, we're talking about spirituality. So here, one thing is very important. Is the methodology answering the questions I'm asking about my life. Okay, so that's the first thing. Because we're talking about spirituality, right? So it's got to be something about the meaning of life for me, according to how I'm asking. Does it answer that question? If it answers that question and I resonate with it, then I should have a nice and easy feeling about it. I should say, oh my God, I found answers to the meaning of my life. Okay, I found an answer. I now feel like this is what I have to do. So you have to check with this inner scrutiny. And this is why inner work is really important. Like I mentioned it to Ray a minute ago, this inner work is very important, that a person needs to check if my heart feels fulfilled with where I'm at right now. Now, fulfillment doesn't mean I'm flying in the clouds, I'm having a great time, and this is just a lovely sensation. No, it is me getting satisfactory answers towards what my life is about. Okay. And sometimes, as you know, truth is, well, not sometimes, truth is all the time painful, because our desire to receive always feels like it wants contentment and it never gets fulfilled. So truth is it's never going to get fulfilled. So there you go. We're never going to really have a good time in it. So here the measuring point is, what's the question that I'm asking, and am I getting an answer? And if that answer resonates, okay? So feeling good or bad is not a measurement tool. How true the answer feels to my question is your measuring yardstick. And if so, then you can start to follow the guide and the study. The second thing you need to check is the guide always guiding me to the meaning of life? Or is there something else happening along the way, which could be a little dodgy? As you can see with many religious things that are happening out there with cash, money, and all kinds of other, as they say, what do they call them? Friends with benefits, I think. Okay. So, do you see what I'm saying? So, the guide needs to kind of like channel the student, channel the person to the meaning of life. Okay. And that should be the only topic that we're in the game of. All right. So this is really important to understand. So these are a few things. And the third thing you need to check is the guide trying to attract the student towards himself, or directing the student towards the creator, towards a connection with the creator. Right? Why is that important? Because in the wisdom of Kabbalah, the purpose of life is to create a connection with the creator. Right? Is that true? So these things need to be like clear cut, because then, well, then you can decide if this guy is a guide, or I don't know, if he's a snake oil salesman. Who knows? Okay. So that kind of stuff is important for a person to check. Right? And you just need to constantly make sure you're on the right track. Now, a real guide in the wisdom of Kabbalah should direct the students to nullifying the ego, so they can go above the desire to receive in order to reach equivalence of form with the creator, so they can have a connection with the creator, which is a higher level of consciousness we need to achieve. Okay. Anything else is not a topic of discussion, and anything else is really not part of spirituality. Right? This is why, with respect to other methods out there in corporeality, I don't know, religions, other methods, or whatever, there are more than, I heard, 3,800 or more than 4,000 religions on the planet. Okay, so anyone can believe in anything, but in the wisdom of Kabbalah, that's the direction we're taking. Okay, so there's no business, there's no all this monkey business, if you know what I mean. And then, there's just the goal, right? It just needs to be straightforward. Okay. Zohar for All, excerpt number 2. Sibel's asking, well, what to do if this explains all the facts, but the person thinks that he does not deserve all this effort? What do you mean you don't deserve all this effort? Well, if your heart has awakened, you are asking about the meaning of life. Okay. It means you need to get corrected. It's not a matter of deserving. If I've come to the age of school, right? Let's say I'm now, I don't know, 6 years old and I have to go to primary school. Okay. Well, I can't say to mum, well, do I really deserve going to primary school? Okay. They're just going to say, listen, dude, you're 6 years old. You got to go to primary school. End of story. Okay. There's no discussion here whether you're worthy or not. And nobody's asking you questions. Okay. And this is how life is. You see, you wake up, you start asking about life. And nobody really told you if you want to ask any questions about life. Maya, close your mic. Okay. So nobody's asking us questions. You wake up, and the minute we wake up to this question and we're looking for the meaning of life, it is a sign we have to grow up. Okay. This is the beginning of our next state. And if we don't take that on, life's just gonna terrorize us. That's just how it is. This is why humanity is going from bad to worse all the time. It's just like, getting rotten. Okay? So this is also our ego wants to run away. Oh, do I really deserve this? You better get corrected because you're causing damage to everyone. Okay? Which is actually the same thing for all of us. Because once a person has been awakened, it is a sure sign that they're causing damage and they need to change it. This is why we're seeing a lot of spiritual awakening on the planet, because people are beginning to having the need to wake up, because you see how rotten and crummy things are going. Excerpt number 2. This is from Zohar for All, Shemot, Exodus. And the new king arose. Were it not for sages, people would not know what is Torah and what are the commandments of the Creator, and there would be no difference between man's spirit and the spirit of a beast. Again, were it not for sages, so sages means people who've attained a higher level. If we didn't have people who have a spiritual holding on to that spiritual level and had not described to us, what we're doing here, then we'd never have the Torah. Torah means instruction manual and light, right? Torah from the word horah and te'ura. Te'ura means lighting. Okay, so if you go to a shop in Israel, you can see Te'ura, lighting shop. That's where you get all your lighting. Okay, and horah is a user manual. Torah, if you use the manual correctly, you will be enlightened. All right, so you can put a bulb in your brain as well. That's enlightenment. So what we have to do now is go with what they're saying. So the teaching is really important because it answers a fundamental thing for all of us in humanity, and that is the meaning of life. Okay, the meaning of life, what we're really doing here. It's a big question mark, and this question is something we're all running away from. This is why we have 1,001 distractions in life every day, which is running away from the question. So what we have to do is understand what the Creator wants from us, right? That's what the Creator's commandments are. What does the Creator want from a person? Okay, I'm sure you guys have all looked up into the sky in the distressful moments of your life and said, what do you want from me? Huh? So, well, they're answering that question. Okay. And there would be no difference between man's spirit and the spirit of a beast. So, if we did not have a teaching to raise ourselves to a higher level, we would be just like a mule, or maybe a donkey, right? Not a mule. As David says, a donkey, a wild donkey, as it says in the text. Okay, why? Because, our nature is like, yeah, whatever kind of thing, just like a donkey, right? He doesn't really want to move unless he has to. Okay, so neither do we. This is why we love rest. Okay, so the couch is like the second bed. Until you go to bed, that is your bed. You know what I mean? So it's like we want to move from one bed to another and just fulfill this formality because we like to rest. Okay, and that's our nature, and this is exactly how it is. So unless we have a desire, a motivation for fulfillment, we don't really want to make that movement. This is why the majority of humanity don't really make a change in their life until the state they're in becomes intolerable. Okay, you get to a state it's intolerable, and then you make a move. Okay, we can see that in our country very often. That everything has to really just come to the last level, and then say, oh, maybe you should, maybe we should get up and do something about it. Okay, and that's just, well, how it is. Okay, but that's human nature, so we can't really complain. This is how things work. And if we don't reach that high level of consciousness, we will die as we have been born, and that is nothing and nothing but an animal level. Okay, so we will be dying as animals if we don't get spiritual. Now, obviously, because we think we're smart, okay, it's just a thought that we are smart. We think something is likely to happen after we're dead. But that's also a sign of our stupidity, since we just get buried. And if you dig us up after a few months, you'll just find a skeleton there. Okay? A sure sign that nothing is really going to happen. So if we want something to happen, there has to be some kind of a drastic change in the way I perceive reality that can convince me to understand a continuation of a process. Other than that, we will go as we have come. Abdul Qadir is asking, my guide, when the sages teach the language of the Creator, does it teach according to the attitude of the student? The student will understand the guide according to his own ears. This is why everybody hears something different. Okay, so this is why it's everybody is their own path, as they say. You have to, if you're going to study, the student has to make for him or herself a guide. A guide cannot make anyone a student. The student has to make the Rav. See what I mean? Why? Because the student wants to get what the guide has. So the attitude of the student determines how he's going to get what the guide has. All right? Does it make sense? If it doesn't make sense, write to me and we'll get to a senseful situation. Ingrid's asking, what's the difference between work in the 10 and also work within oneself? Well, the work in the 10 is how I apply what we learn, which is mostly from Rabash in the group articles and the social articles, where we're trying to figure out how we can interact with each other in a way that instead of me thinking about me starts to think about you, so that you become more important. And the reason this is very critical is that if I want to get out of my egoism, I have to give somebody else value for me to make some kind of a concession. It's the same thing in relationships, right? So if we love somebody, we make concessions, don't we? Right? And if two people love each other, they both make mutual concessions and then they can grow their love. So, what does a concession mean? A concession means that for your benefit, I'm willing to give up on my benefit. So, another person, the group or a group of people are critical in me applying some kind of a concession. And then, according to the feedback I get from the things that I'm doing, like giving a concession, I can discern for myself, well, do I really want to love this person? We think about this in life, don't we? So let's say I've got friends or sometimes, relationship, and then we think, well, yesterday things were okay, but today this is a little dodgy, right? So, what am I doing? I'm evaluating the feedback from the relationship, right? So I'm doing inner work. I'm contemplating. Okay. So now I have to do the same thing, but with respect to the goal. Okay. In our regular life, how are we doing it? In our regular life, I'm thinking, well, do I feel good in this relationship or not? If I don't, why do you want to stick around? Let's hit the road. But in spirituality, it's a different ball game. Why? Well, we want to attain contact with the Creator. In order to do that, we need to get to a state above our self-benefit. So now I have to start looking at things from a different perspective, which means I have to look at the benefit of the other person rather than my personal benefit. Now, once I start doing that, I'm going to have an inner conflict because I'm going to start thinking to myself, well, do I really want to do this? Is it worth it? Why am I giving concessions all the time anyway? Right? So I start asking myself all kinds of questions about why I'm doing it. Is it worth it? Do I want to stick around? I'm looking at life and I'm getting a bit pressured from life. Is the Creator worth it? All right? No reward is worth this. Okay, it starts to look like it's like the path all of a sudden starts to look really like, dark and grey. Okay? Why? Because my desire to receive is constantly getting slapped around. Okay. So now I have to start thinking and start increasing the importance of it, because if it becomes important, the suffering becomes tolerable. If I start to lose the importance, I start telling myself, you know what, I'm just like not feeling it. Not gonna happen. So then a person drops off the bandwagon. So then we got to get a new drummer or whatever. You see what I mean? So this inner work is constantly evaluating how I need to move forward, why I need to move forward, and so on. All right, it's a very important part of spirituality. They don't do this in religions and stuff. In religions, it's a straightforward situation. This is why everybody's got the power to do religious actions. Why? Because I can do these and then I can write this in my accounting book. And then when I'm dead, I can say, listen, this is the good stuff I've done. Can I now go to heaven? I heard there's some good stuff happening there. I want to join the party. Okay. But, why? Because I can expect a good return on my investment. Right? I got a good return on my investment. But in spirituality, well, what kind of a return are we going to get? Well, we're going to get a return of going above the desire to receive pleasure for myself. That doesn't really sound like a good return on my investment. Okay? But we don't know what the return really is. If we knew what the investment was going to be returning to us, we'd be doing it egoistically, wouldn't we? Then we would never really get out of self-love. So this is why it says you got to go with your eyes shut. Does that make sense? You can't go with a carrot in front of you, in other words. Otherwise, it's just going to be, just like the people out there who are doing things for a reward. Right? So I'm doing stuff and I want to get paid at the end of the month. So I'm doing all my religious deeds and I want to, go to heaven and, I don't know, roll in the haystack. That's just how it is. So with spirituality, we're trying to get a completely different nature. And we're trying to attain the Creator's nature. Maximum bestowal and love of others. So it's like completely against our own nature, because our nature is complete self-love. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge. Okay? We don't actually know what it feels like to be out of our nature as well. But if you think about it, let's think about it for a second, right? This is inner work. In our current nature, if I am a desire to receive pleasure all the time, and I'm running around the planet trying to get all kinds of fulfillment, and I come to an understanding that even if I get what I want, the fulfillment cancels the desire. So I'm left with no fulfillment and no desire. And I'm in a minus now, aren't I? So if I just do proper maths, like primary school algebra, it's like 1 + 1 = -2. Because I've been running around trying to get a fulfillment, wasting my time and money, 1 + 1, okay, which equals a fleeting pleasure, because the pleasure disappears afterwards, right? I'm not, once I'm eating a tub of ice cream, that tub of ice cream doesn't stay on my taste buds forever. It's gone after the 5th or 6th, lick. It's game over. And then I'm just left with the extra calories. Try burning that off. So then I've got a big minus. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm looking at life and thinking, well, whatever I do, I'm just going to be in a minus. What's the point? So once I understand what the point is, I can stop running around. Okay? And this is why people get tired with life. Even rich people get tired with life. Because they're like, I've got everything and there's nothing to show for in terms of my happiness. How's that work out for you? It can't work out for you. This is why logically, for us, it makes sense to get out of this cycle. See what I mean? That's the rat race. So, I hope that makes sense, Ingrid. Abdul Qadir is carrying on with this question. How do I nullify myself against the teacher and guide? Like Rabbi says here, you close your eyes and you do what the guide says. That's the only way. It's the same for all of us. When I came to the Rav as well, I was like 30 years old, 31 years old. What, you think I want to nullify myself? I'm looking at life and thinking I've got everything to take from life. Okay, got a good job, good career, everything's working out just fine. But if you're dotting the hearts awake and you understand, you got to understand and feeling that you just have to go above this, then you say, you know what, that's it. What do I need to do? Then you just ask the guide one thing. What do I need to do to raise myself? And then he says, these are the things you got to do. And that's what you do. There's no other way. In school as well, this is how we grow up in school. Right? If you took an apprenticeship and you're working for some guy and he's teaching you the job, what do? You just nullify yourself. You say, this is the guy who knows how to do it. So I just shut up and do what he says. Okay, otherwise you don't learn. Otherwise you don't get his mastery. You know what I mean? Because a guide is passing on a mastery, is passing on his art, his wisdom. And if you come with a full cup, well, it's already, there's nothing to do. So you got to come like a clean slate, and you got to let the guide do the painting while you're holding the brush and he's holding your hand. And you've got to let your hand just go and let his hand guide your hand. And that's the only way. All right, so how to nullify yourself? You're going to have to get a lot of strength from the group. It's not easy. So the friends have to help. The friends have to be there. And we all have to kind of like do it together. Nodan's asking, one has a responsibility to his friends, but what kind of responsibility does he have to his guide? What can one do to further elevate one's guide? You want to elevate the wisdom of the guide, not the guide himself. All right. So this is why we can't make mistakes like they do in the outside world. You have to figure out, what do I want from the guide? According to his wisdom, he's important. You understand what I mean? And nothing else. So if you're studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, the only focus should always be the goal. And the guide is like a component to get to the goal. See what I mean? The group is also, it's a tool to get to the goal. And if I don't have tools, I've got nothing to do. This is why the guide is important, the friends are important, the books are important. We have to like make a cake out of all the ingredients. And that's why. So the guide is important because no guide, no goal. No guide, no goal. If I don't have parents, let's say I'm born and my parents leave me somewhere, obviously I'm going to die. Okay, if nobody's taking care of me, it's game over and I'm dead. Well, same in spirituality. Same if I want to, learn any profession. If somebody doesn't teach me, if somebody doesn't raise me, this is how life is. Ingrid's asking, how does one raise importance of one's ego doesn't feel any gain? How does one raise importance if one's ego doesn't feel any gain? Well, now I have to start making a different calculation. A different calculation. This calculation needs to be from the understanding I mentioned a minute ago. I'm running around the planet trying to get all kinds of fulfillment, and I've got nothing to show for. Nothing. I get whatever I want. I'm still not happy. A person who can get whatever they want in life, they're probably the most miserable person. Why? Because in order to get pleasure, I have to have a yearning, right? Imagine it's like those days when I wish I had this chocolate. Okay, so you like really feel like you're missing that chocolate. Okay, so now when you're eating that chocolate, you're like gobbling it up, right? Why? Because you got a desire for it. You've got, you really wanted that chocolate and you were in prison for 10 years and you didn't get it. And now you're out and that packet is staring at you at the corner shop. So you're diving onto it and then you eat it with great pleasure. But if you have everything in life, you don't have a desire because you've got everything. And if you can get anything you want, you still have no desire because you can get anything anyway. And if you don't have a desire, there's no pleasure. Then you're all of a sudden depressed. And then all the poor people are thinking, why are these rich people so depressed? They've got everything. We've got nothing, but we're happy with a bowl of soup. How can a poor guy be happy with a bowl of soup? And a rich guy who's got everything can't be happy with anything, because the guy who's got a bowl of soup in front of him and he's poor, he doesn't have a bowl of soup every day. So when he gets it, he feels pretty lucky and he's having pleasure from it. But a rich guy can eat whatever he wants, whenever he wants. So the taste is always like, fleeting away just like that. So I'm left with thinking, what am I living for really? Right? And that's how it is. I hope that makes sense. It's a mathematical equation. The pleasure cancels the desire. You are left with a minus. Once you start to see that in life, then you think, I've got to get something where the pleasure sticks. Okay? Then the Kabbalists come into the picture and say, hey, listen, there is a way where you can be happy all the time. And then we're thinking, well, how's that going to work out? Well, if you love other people, and if other people love you too, then you've got this mutual air between you called love of others, where you can feel secure, confident, peace, tranquility, and an ongoing pleasure. That for us in the 21st century is like, I don't know, some fantasy island, right? But that's how it is. This is why sometimes they look at the wisdom of Kabbalah and they go, this is just not realistic. Of course, it's not realistic, but what do you think? Our life here is realistic, running around a bunch of pleasures where you get nothing out of it and then you end up dead? What, that sounds really realistic to you? You see what I mean? So we just have to have a new perspective on life. And how can we build that new perspective? Well, how do we wake up in life to the meaning of life? Through miserable experiences that make us make us feel like, we've got a meaningless life. That's how we all wake up. So through this meaninglessness, looking for a meaning makes sense. Now, this is why if a person hasn't got a dot in the heart that's awakened and looking for the meaning of life, well, Kabbalists say, well, I've got nothing really to explain to you. Why? Because, well, you're not looking for it. You don't want it. If you don't want it, what do you want me to do? Stuff it down your throat? They can't. So a person needs to wake up, needs to come to an understanding, say, well, really, what am I living for? We're going to end up dead God knows when. Could be the next second. We don't know. And we're running around like headless chooks. And that's it. That is the summary of our life. So looking for an alternative and getting answers according to how our nature works, right? We're not getting some fantasy answers. We're actually getting logical answers because the wisdom is explaining to us how our nature works. And when we look at life and how I live, and then it all of a sudden dawns on me that these guys are telling the truth. There is no way in the world I can be happy in this situation. It just cannot happen because pleasure cancels desire. Once you figure that out, it's like end of game. It's like you've taken the pill. Welcome to reality. Okay. So now you got to decide, which one do I want? Where do I want to go? Okay. But emotionally and intellectually, it should make sense. Okay. Both emotionally and intellectually. Then I can say, you know what? Despite the fact that this is against my nature and there is no way in hell I want to love anybody, I understand that too. But I understand I need to change this nature. And that understanding needs to be grown all the time. You got to look after it like a baby. You got to, keep sticking that baby bottle in between the lips and just keep pumping it with the importance of the goal. Otherwise, our egoism will overcome our desire to change. This is why we need an environment. This is why we need friends, a guide, the books, everything. And as we move more and more forward, our ego is revealed even more. The more we're against the path, even though it's logical, now we've made some sense out of it. Okay. Even though it's logical, we've made some sense out of it. And as we progress, our ego is going to be more against the path. And we're going to find it more and more difficult to increase the importance of the goal. So when you're new to the path, everything is honky-dory. It's like a new romance, you know. It's like a beautiful new relationship. But you never know the depth of the inside of the next person, right? It's all honky-dory at the most, like little cats sniffing around. They go, you smell nice. Okay. And this is how they court and mate, right? But you see the relationship after a few months end up with like several kittens and the guy's off. Okay. And he's nowhere to be seen again. Right? And you're thinking, what happened? Because that's how it goes. Right? So this is our animate way of life. So if we, constantly don't work on increasing the human side, we end up with, a bunch of kittens alone. All right, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Anyway, our animate life is very primitive. And if we don't raise ourselves to the next level, we're just going to get slapped around in life. Okay, so we just have to make sure as our ego increases, we keep pushing forward by the use of the environment to increase the importance of the goal. And that goes for everyone, and also in the spiritual degrees as well, because the higher you go, the harder you fall. Right, yeah. So that will call it a night. You guys have a great evening or a day, depending on where you are, and hopefully we'll hook up again next week. All the best. Bye-bye.